Welcome to Middle Fingers Up, the show where we hold our heads high and our middle fingers higher. I'm your host, Kieran McKay. Today, we welcome Glen Davies. Glen is a guest who wears many hats in the world of wellness and storytelling. Not only is Glen a dedicated personal trainer, you got spin, a HIIT instructor, the list goes on, but he also hosts a podcast that explores life experiences, personal journeys, and with this unique blend of fitness expertise, a passion for sharing compelling narratives, Glen is here today to share a little bit about his own journey and what professional pursuits intersect in a meaningful way when it comes to recording, comes to living life. I know he loves traveling, so I'm hoping to get some good stuff out of him today. So let's go ahead and welcome you. So thank you for being here today.
Wow, what an intro.
Is that why you're paused?
Yeah, I was just waiting if you had any other accolades to give me before we started.
Oh, well, I always appreciate that. I think it's nice to let our listeners have a little bit of who's coming on, and usually my welcome intro sort of lets the listeners and my guests know sort of why I'm excited and what I want to get into. And yeah, I'm sure there's a lot in between there that we get to learn through you today. But no, I think it's lovely to have you on today because your podcast, Vantage Point, I know you took a little bit of a break and we'll get into that. But Vantage Point and Middle Fingers Up started around the same time last year. Yeah. I think maybe I was like a few episodes ahead. But there's a few of you from Europe as well. So I think I feel like I'm becoming an honorary member of, the Europeans here. But your time and your storytelling and all the things that you started doing was very similar. Or I guess I can say my podcast, my platform is very similar to you. And we're on different parts of the world. We don't even know each other. And clearly there's something, when I got listening and thought, oh, I really like what you're doing here. But I could tell there's a story leading up to why you're doing what you're doing because I had my own. And so it's always cool when you see other people in doing something similar, taking a risk, trying to find their creative outlet, whatever it may be, give back. And when you're in that same place, it's cool to be able to connect and say, okay, how are you doing what you're doing? Or what's that about? So it's been nice to have little wins in the background, liking each other's content or messaging each other or saying that's amazing. And I've appreciated that in the last year. And here we are a year later and you're sitting here today and I get to interview you. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I became a fan really quick. So I'm glad that you're here today.
Yeah, it's been cool watching your journey as well. I'd say you've definitely surpassed me considering we started at the same point. I took a bit of time off, but yeah, you asked why I got going with that, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well. But for me, it was like I'm doing bits in the gym to train my body, but I'm not really doing anything to train my mind. And I thought it would be cool, having listened to a lot of podcasts. I like the way that through sharing stories, you're seeing so many different perspectives from different people. And just by listening to that every week, you're broadening your own perspective in a way that you couldn't unless you sat down and had a conversation with each of those people, which obviously not everyone can. And you need some sort of platform to be able to do that. And I've seen that's what you've been doing as well. And it's been pretty eye-opening. It's surprising how much you can connect to someone through like an actual conversation. And I've been lucky to have experts in their field come onto my podcast and talk to me in a way that they would talk and give seminars on, say, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and people and things like that, whereas they would sit down with me and talk about it and talk about their mindset. And those in-person, almost in-person conversations, obviously mostly through a screen, it's surprising how much you take from that compared to if you just watched one of their videos or if you just seen them on social media, have an actual chat with someone. It's some of the things I've heard people say on my podcast have stuck with me. And I'm sure it's the same with you, like having that kind of face-to-face chat. You really feel like you connect with them and really broaden your mind in a way I didn't really even expect when I started it.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. And I'm just like nodding my head to yes, 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 everything you're saying, because it's so hard to describe that fortunate feeling that we have, or how lucky we are that people agree to come on and give their time and want to talk about, like you said, whether they're experts on the topic or they're here to share their story in hopes to connect someone else out there. I think the most crazy thing out of all of it, and maybe I sometimes feel guilty about it, is I feel like I'm gaining the most because it was meant to help myself and others, as I would imagine for you. And then in the end, you feel like, oh my God, I feel like I'm constantly winning every time I sit down with a guest. Because when you open your mind to, I think, being challenged with your own perspective, or also when we want to learn, we hear people talk in a different way. And so you're so right. Watching a video or hearing a speaker is phenomenal, but to be able to sit in a room or have a conversation in a way where others, and I'm sure you hear this too, others, message back saying, I felt like I was in the room too. And that's what we're trying to do, is generate comfort and safety so people can talk. But I want to go back for a second, because you said you were inspired by connecting the physical to the mental. And I want to know a little bit more about that. For you, how did you have that aha moment? How did you decide, oh yeah, I need to mentally also exercise my brain here too?
Well, I guess it was a few things. So back in lockdown in 2020, I started going for walks more, jogs more, things like that. And I got bored of just listening to music. So I really got into listening to podcasts then. And that's when I realized, oh, you know what, I actually fancy the creative itch in me, made me think, I could do that. I want to try that, see if I can do it at least. And it just kind of made sense at the time. Well, I guess a year later, really, to get into it. I used to have a podcast called Fireside, which I did with a friend of mine, which is totally different vibe. We talk about like really weird stuff. And then I ended up getting into Vantage Point podcast, which was my own thing, which was more about sort of connecting people and sharing perspectives. And I think that's definitely where I feel more at home, is this kind of thing where it's about sort of sharing stories. And it's a selfish thing, because I'm doing it so that I can learn stuff from people that I otherwise wouldn't have this connection with. But my theory is that if I'm enjoying what I'm doing, then people listening will also enjoy it. Yeah. So it's the best of both worlds. Everyone wins.
I think that's a great message to send to people. I would imagine you've gotten good feedback from people.
Yeah, really good. Like, I'm always grateful when people do send me messages telling me like what they thought of episodes and stuff. And it's always great when I see people come on board who were following a guest that I had on, and then have stuck around and watched my other episodes or listened. I don't really like the sort of idea of becoming any kind of role model.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's too much pressure for me.
It is, but, I know.
But I tell you what it is, though. I think by having people on and asking them questions that, I've got some idea how people are going to answer when I ask them things, like when I get a martial arts expert on, I'll ask them sort of what got them into training and their sort of mentality behind their training. And I know it's going to be good stuff. I know it's going to be stuff that people will benefit from hearing. So, I know it's not going to be some bad advice. I got them on because they're an expert in their field. So I can let them do the talking.
Yes.
But I'm still putting a message out there that I believe people need to hear. Like you say, maybe young men who might benefit from the inside the mind of a martial arts expert, for example, or say an artist or someone who's in the fashion industry, whatever, what they've gone through to get to their goals. Not everyone's on the same path, but there might be something that they've done on their journey that you could apply to your journey.
I think that's exactly it, is that it's not about one person's whole story. I have to connect to everything. And because that thing never happened to me, I don't know how to connect. I think it's exactly what you said. It's portions and parts of us. There's parts of each other that we connect with. And when we hear stories, like you said, that's how things resonate. You can read something in a textbook, or someone can tell you it in a story, and the story is going to sit with us. And I think sometimes we dismiss a lot of people who we can learn from, because we get in this weird thing of comparing, or we don't agree with something, and therefore now I don't agree with all of you. And I'm hoping, as I continue meeting with guests like yourself and others, that I can continue challenging that, because it's easy to fall into that. Why are we looking at that person's story when that other person's story is worse? And it's like, we're not comparing.
It's because you don't understand where they're coming from.
Well, right. And what would you say, or what advice would you give to folks that maybe don't even recognize that sometimes that's the barrier, is I don't understand where someone's coming from, so it's not familiar. How can we help generate empathy and not have to feel like we have to know someone's story or have been there to really understand? What's worked for you?
I guess just to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, really, depending on what people are going through and, what kind of path they're on, to them, their problems are as big as your worst problems. So no matter if you think, oh, that person's had it easy, to them, their worst problem is still the worst thing they've ever been through.
Yeah.
So, if you take the worst thing you've ever been through and you think, well, I've clearly had it worse than them, what are they complaining about? You've got to understand that to them, that's still a big deal. So you can't just sort of brush it off.
Yeah.
You can understand where they've had to sort of go through on their path and then how they've got over that or are going through that. Mm-hmm. And you can still take things from the way they're navigating their journey, even though it's different to yours.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. That's a good message to remind us, as well as maybe, ask ourselves, like, do I look at it that way? Because that helps work through that comparison piece. And you're right, like, one story isn't better than the other. And to that individual, that's the worst thing possible that could have happened. And so if we're going to, try to take that away from them, that's the sad part, right? We miss that connection or opportunity. So I think that's well said. Okay, I wanted to do my middle fingers up segment with you, but before I do that, I'm going to ask you some silly questions first, because let's talk a little bit about your love for fitness. We're going to hear more about where this came from, but I'm going to ask you today, okay, so if you could have a workout session with any historical figure or like a fictional character or even a celebrity, who would it be and what kind of workout would you do together? You're like, what? Like, I didn't sign up for this.
Oh my gosh, geez, I wasn't prepared for this one. I don't really think. Any historical figure. I don't know. I mean, the obvious answer's got to be Schwarzenegger, just to learn from him. But, I'd like to answer with a non-gym person, really, just because it'd be funnier.
Arnold would be like so intense.
Yeah, I feel like Arnold's the peak, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ronnie Coleman, maybe. He's another one, the lightweight baby guy.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, just to see like how much these guys would push you to train.
And what kind of training?
The hype in that gym must be crazy. Heavy lifting. I mean, they do bodybuilding.
Yeah.
That's not what I do, but there's a lot of crossover between what they do and what I do. But also there's a few just like interesting people that you could bond with in a training session. So, maybe, I don't know, like a Leonardo DiCaprio or someone like that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Because, an interesting person like that, where you would get to know them in the gym, because you get a real deep personal connection with people in the gym, similar to here in a way. But when you're pushing yourself to your limit and someone's there with you, trying to motivate you to help you do that, and then they're doing the same for you, there's this sort of bond that you get with them where you feel comfortable saying like pretty much anything in that, at least in that moment. Yeah. So, it'd be interesting to spend time with, like, I don't know, DiCaprio springs to mind for some reason.
Yeah,
but,
that's awesome.
I'm sure there's a whole array of people that would be super interesting to train with.
Yeah, right. I really like what you said there about that bond that you build when you work out with someone. I've had this past year, I used to go to like a spin club and, where they do sort of what you teach. That's sort of where I would go. They shut down, COVID, that sucked. Sure. So I didn't know where to start going, because going to the gym, I don't like it. And so a friend invited me, and over the past year, I've been going to her house every morning and we work out together, and we do 4 to 6 days together. We lift, we do all sorts of things. And it also helps that she's a therapist. However, it's like when you are doing physical activity in the way of, you can't do one more rep, or you just aren't in the mood to push yourself like that. It's exactly what you say when you have that other person or that voice, that voice of reason, of hope, of one more rep, or we got this, or I'm in the same boat as you, but together we're going to push through. I don't know. I don't know what the word for that is, but it is the most magical, validating feeling that I feel helps me get through the rest of the day.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is reassurance. That's what it is. It's like you get the blood, sweat, and tears of how hard those squats are, and now I can do 5 of them or whatever it may, even those small little changes that you go from having no weights to, you know, adding weights or whatever you do. And they get to have those fist bumps with you. It's such I've never experienced that before. So this past year has been phenomenal, having that routine with this friend, that we've gotten to know each other way better. Do you have a workout buddy, someone that you go with, or do you generally train alone?
Recently, I've been training alone just because I end up getting my workouts in between clients.
Yeah.
So it just makes more sense for me to train in that time. It's just a part of my day that I squeeze in where I can. And I'm following a program basically written for myself at the moment. So it kind of alienates people from joining in with me a little bit, because I'm sticking to my program no matter what. So, if you're training with me, you've got to do this or get out of my way, you know. But back in the day, I've trained with different people who've pushed me in different ways. So, for example, I trained with a fella who did powerlifting for a while, and I learned a lot of technique from him. And I trained with people who've done bodybuilding and stuff like that. I try and find people who are at a similar level to me, but have knowledge that I don't. Mm-hmm. And I find they're the best people to train with when I'm looking to train with someone else.
Yeah, that's great. What's a form of exercise or fitness routine that you initially thought you dislike, but you ended up enjoying or benefiting from?
Okay, that's an easy one. HIIT training, high intensity interval training. Used to hate it. I didn't get the point of it. I only ever did either long distance, steady state cardio or heavy lifting, right? But never that in between, which is HIIT training, because it was just, you're totally uncomfortable. It feels like you're repping out reps of an exercise for no reason, pushing yourself to failure to a point beyond control, where, you know, there's a safe amount of reps you can do. And in HIIT workouts, you're encouraged to push yourself to the point of failure all the time, no matter how tired you are. And it feels like you're almost doing more damage than good. But in recent years, running my own HIIT classes for work, I've definitely realized the benefits of doing it. And there is a safe way to push people beyond what they're comfortable with, and introduce people to new movements they might not otherwise do, because they're not lifters, you know. But it's a good way to sort of get people in and show them what it feels like to get a sweat on, really push themselves past the point they're comfortable with.
Totally. I would agree too. I still stand by, I hate HIIT, makes me puke. I yell and swear at the instructor. Why are you making me do this? But now that I am doing more lifting, I'm finding that intensity has really helped me, built some ability to do cardio, that endurance, but also the balance of being able to, if I'm going to go into a lunge or use the TRX or something, I feel, because of doing HIIT in the way that I did, I have the capacity to move a little bit different. So I feel like you can bring that over to that side. So HIIT, I thought maybe, well, I know I said fitness routine, but are there like things like burpees that you love? Because I hate burpees. Like, do you make your clients do burpees all the time?
Not usually my clients. Usually people are in my HIIT. So I run HIIT classes, and I do one-to-one personal training sessions. In my personal training sessions, we focus on lifting technique. So, you know, lifting as heavy as possible with as much control as possible. And in HIIT workouts, it's pretty much the opposite. Control pretty much goes out the window. Obviously, there's an effort to do that. But when you're really pushing, you know, there's a limit to how much you can keep strict form when you're doing burpees to failure. So it's more about just getting a sweat on, the kind of community of, you know, people coming together and everyone's in the same boat. Yeah, I wouldn't say one of my favorite exercises. Okay,
so we're going to talk a little bit about you as a podcast host. So if you were to title a podcast episode about your own life experiences and fitness journey, what would it be called?
Perhaps something that describes a sort of like overcoming struggle. Yeah, I feel like that's just a recurring theme that probably everyone can relate to. But overcoming struggle, winning. I don't know. Is that too egotistical to say? But like, I feel like beating stuff, overcoming challenges that come my way. I guess it's a fun title that would somehow encapsulate all that.
Yeah.
Winning stuff. How's that?
A lot of what I hear you saying is crisis or the struggle is part of an opportunity. It's the catalyst to something hopefully better for us, is sort of right. That. Yeah, to help us, you know, push through or get through. It's interesting when you say you need that, because even to something so basic, like we got this puppy, and we have a puppy trainer that's coming over, and he's teaching us how to train this puppy. And one of the things, though, that he's teaching us right off the bat is this pressure, leash pressure. And he's teaching her how to manage stress. And it just, everything that he teaches me, whether it's leash pressure or what, I'm like, this relates to us as humans. Like, you know, he's like, when we don't have the buildup and you as a human go outside and you haven't had any stress or haven't been taught to, the impact that has on us as we grow up. A lot of young people, teenagers, like young adults starting their job for the first time after going to school, you kind of experience something a little different. And I like what he's teaching us with the puppy. Like, we got to kindly teach her how to deal with the stress and the pressure to be able to handle it. So that's what that reminded me of when you said that. Okay, so yeah, what do you want to put your middle fingers up to today?
Fear, because that's the only thing that ever holds you back. You're capable of doing so much, but it's always the fear of failing that stops you from doing it. You know, even if it's something on a minor scale, something you're putting off, it's always fear. It's like a small element of fear. And the reason this came up in particular is because I met someone recently who there's something in their head where they just don't feel fear, right? Some people are like this, right? People who go skydiving, people who do all this stuff on a regular basis, they don't feel any thrill from it. It's like a peaceful thing for them, and they don't feel fear. And it made me think, oh, imagine if life was so simple that you just don't feel fear in any situation. But then you look at it again, and it's like we can use that fear as a challenge that you can rise to, and by repeating something and throwing yourself into uncomfortable situations, not letting it put you off, then that's what grows character. So yeah, fear.
Yeah, that's well said. Is there like an example or a story for you where having that fear and working through it and coming out the other end of, oh, wait a minute, this was worth it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. So I guess podcasting for one.
Yeah.
You know, I could have put that off forever. You know, and she got into it. I didn't know how it would go. Would I get in front of a guest and just stumble and like not be able to talk in front of people and it all be a total disaster?
Yeah.
You know, might have happened, but it didn't. I made it happen. You know, hit classes, that's something. Until you do one, it's like, how am I going to convince a whole room of people to do 50 burpees 8 times?
It's a really good question.
You've got to be so confident in what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, you know, I guess there was an element of fear there. But again, it's like you just got to throw yourself in there and make it happen. And then the next time you do it, the fear's gone.
I think that's a underrated middle fingers up segment, because we can all relate to how many times we've been paralyzed by that fear. And you're right, there are times where it helps us, it's necessary, but I don't think we're talking about that. I think we're talking about the amount of opportunities that we've skipped or we walked away from because we're so worried about controlling the outcome. I'm actually going to put my middle fingers up piece aside and join you with that one, because I think that's a big one that gets in the way every single day for so many of us. Do you have any advice for anyone listening today if there's something they've been so eager wanting to do, but the fear is holding them back?
Yeah, I guess just weigh up the pros and cons of what you're going to do in your mind, right? You know, pro, you're going to achieve something that you've been putting off for a while. Con, maybe some people think you're a bit weird. But end of the day, what are the chances you're actually going to fail at that thing if you truly give it 100%? But probably pretty low, you know? If you plan out what you can do and you do it, you say, right, today's the day, let's do it.
Yeah.
You know, there ends up being not a lot to be scared of. I see it the most, I think, with people saying, right, I'm going to start the gym. And they'll make every excuse under the sun for not actually starting the gym. And they'll say, oh, we'll set it as a New Year's resolution.
Yeah. It's always, I'm going to start working out.
Yeah. There's never a perfect time. So you just got to throw yourself in there. You know, it's never going to be perfect, but it'll be perfect the next time you do it, or it'll be closer to it the next time you do it, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's well said. Good. I like that one. That's a good one. Okay. Should we talk a little bit about you now? Let's start with Vantage Point. So we sort of touched on Vantage Point at the beginning. We started around the same time. You took a little break from it, but I hear you're getting back. So let's just start with, what's the story that led to the beginning of Vantage Point?
So I had a podcast before Vantage Point called Fireside Podcast, which is still up. You can still listen to it if you really want to submit yourself to that torture.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that? Like, what?
Well, it was my first try at making a podcast, and it was me and my friend Joe at the time, and you know, it was fun. It became more of a stress than something fun to do,
Yeah.
and it tied into around the same time I ended up going to the Philippines for a while. We kind of knocked that on the head. And then when I come back, instead of sort of trying to force a sort of season 2 or continuation of Fireside Podcast, which, various reasons just wasn't working at the time, I was like, right, I'm going to totally pivot, change direction, find a new kind of direction for this. I've got the hang of it now. I've done the learning stage. Let's give it a real go now, Vantage Point, and just went for it on my own. And yeah, like I said to you earlier, I train my body in the gym, but I train my mind when I'm recording a podcast, because I've got to be prepared for whatever guest I have on who might have totally different background to me. I've got to know enough about what they're talking about to be able to ask them interesting questions and be able to give like somewhat insightful responses, and also be in a position so when they answer my questions, I'm actually understanding what they're saying. And so, it is a good little mental test that, keeps you on your toes, because you can get, caught up sitting with a small group of people that don't really challenge you, when there's the internet, for all of its cons, lets you connect with people who are vastly different to you. And I don't know, I think it's just an underrated way of using the internet, really.
Yeah, I do. And I think COVID taught a lot of us about that underrated way of using social media and just even connecting. And there's lots of ways that we can continue working outside of being in the office and all that. And I think that was a good silver lining, if we want to say there was some good that came out of COVID, is learning how to utilize technology in that way. And so, have you had any memorable guests on that till this day you really hold close, or you feel you had a really big aha moment that you weren't expecting with them?
Yeah, I don't particularly want to sort of single one of my guests out. I feel like most of my guests, if not all recently of Vantage Point, have given it a really, really good go and had a lot to offer in different ways. So me and my friends were planning a road trip around Scotland, and a friend of mine came on my podcast who's from Scotland and told us basically all the best places to go. So that was quite cool.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of people who've been martial arts experts, and I think they're the ones who I've sort of connected to the most and really found myself learning from what they're saying, because their mindset to get in a cage or get in a ring and test their skills against someone else, you've got to be so disciplined and have your head in the right place. And they really understand the mindset that goes into training. Even though my type of training is a bit different to that, I can absolutely take the mindset and the values they have and apply that to the sort of training I do.
Mm-hmm. Do you participate in any martial arts?
No, not yet. Not yet.
No,
definitely something on the radar though.
Yeah, I feel like it's your thing. But I also feel my youngest son is in jiu-jitsu, and my older one did Hapkido for a very short period of time. I will connect with you about that part, about just the discipline and some of the values that you always see in when you go into a little studio, you see on the wall, and it's a lot of traditional, a lot of values that come from generations before us. And some ways we sort of lost that along the way. But they're just about how do you respect people and how do you respect yourself? And there's a lot of talk about self-identity and building that confidence. And I agree with you, when we go and participate or get to be part of some of these martial arts, it's amazing. Exactly what you said, the discipline and the awareness that you have to have as an individual when you are getting into a ring or you are going to be competing with someone else. When you had your guests on that come from the martial arts background, were there any similarities in what they shared in terms of how the values connected with them day to day?
Yeah, so there's a lot about respect and a lot about just self-respect as well. I think when you walk into a room of people and you're the most skilled in there, or you're the strongest in there, you have less to prove than if you walk into a room of people and you feel like everyone has something over you,
Yeah.
And just going back a little bit, I feel like with my kind of training, and obviously with martial arts training as well, although they're quite different, I think any kind of training puts into perspective the challenges you face on a day-to-day basis. So say now, you're going to have a hard conversation later. I think you touched on this before. That conversation's not going to be half as hard in a proportion to the hard training or the hard workout you just push yourself through. So say now I just squatted 200 kg, right?
Yeah.
But the mental battle I had to have with myself to achieve that is puts anything else to shame, whatever I'm going to do later. Why would I stress out about, washing the dishes when I've just put myself through that? It puts everything into perspective.
It does. And, I was talking to a friend, and I think I talked about this on a previous episode too. I was on a trip visiting my family. A lot of my family lives out near the Vancouver area, and I didn't get to do my workout routine every day. And I really noticed a dip in my frustration tolerance, my lack of self-awareness, just, when I was being irritated by family members or how short I was being with them. When I got back home and, went back to my friends, did my workout routine, I was like, oh my goodness, why I work out has completely shifted. I thought I was working out to look good, but I realized, not having had the gym for that week or so, it's actually setting me up to manage my anxiety and manage some of the hard things that I realized I put away, right, during the day. Does that kind of connect for you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
If there was as much focus put on healthy eating, exercise, getting enough sleep, getting enough water in the day, as there is put on taking painkillers and antidepressants, I think the whole world would be better off, right? But it's not in anyone's financial interest to push that, so people just got to figure that stuff out for themselves. And a lot of people will go to the gym because of some sort of insecurity, and then they end up falling in love with it. Maybe they started because they don't like the way they look, but then they just fall in love with the process. They like the idea of getting stronger. And as you get physically stronger, you get mentally stronger as well. Not only that, but just physical exercise makes you live longer, right? You're looking after your joints, you're looking after your muscles, which is not just about bodybuilding, but maintaining muscle over time as you age, right? Because your muscle starts wasting away at a certain point in your life. If you can put that off, it's going to be a lot better for you.
I gave my mom a shout out recently because she put that in my head a couple months ago about, I'm really glad you're doing your consistent working out, because as you get older, if you roll an ankle or break a leg or something, hopefully you can bounce back. Or if we have to go get that surgery we weren't expecting, we can recover quick.
I just wanted to add, if your body's in pain, it's trying to tell you something. If you're just doing stuff to mask that pain, you're just putting a plaster over the problem. You should be doing something to fix the problem, whether that's exercise or something that's difficult. Maybe it's something like changing your diet. These are what you need to be doing to fix that problem. Some people might think, oh, it's not easy for me. I've got this pain, that pain. There's always something you can do that isn't just falling back on some sort of artificial thing to get you through it, right? Yeah. In most cases, most people will just fall back on any kind of excuse that is the path of least resistance.
I think it's a good reminder for sure. Do you feel like when you're training, like as a personal trainer, when you're leading these classes, what's the dialogue like for you with your clients in terms of what you're saying right now? Like, do you find the dialogue shifting with clients in seeing health in a different way, or are you still seeing the same thing of, Glenn, I got to lose 20 pounds because I'm getting married in a year, or I'm going to Mexico, I need to be able to fit in a bathing suit, the things that, I don't know, the reasons I signed up to go work out for years and years and years, right? Got a vacation coming, gotta get fit. Do you feel like it's the same sort of themes as well?
Yeah, so still people come to me with that as their main goal. I want to look good for a holiday, but then they end up sticking training with me because they love the feeling of getting stronger and learning about technique and how to improve themselves by themselves. An issue a lot of people have is they're put off from exercise because it's like, oh, I've got this lower back pain, so I can't do anything with it. I better just sit still and not aggravate it. Yeah. Whereas really, in most cases, if you have aches and pains, for example, in your lower back, you just need to develop your core muscles, protect your spine. Letting those muscles waste away is probably the worst thing you can do by not using them. If you can still use it just in a sensible way, right. Maybe not doing 50 burpees for 8 rounds, doing it in a more controlled way, right. Building the muscle to support your joints and get you back to a position where you can start enjoying exercise again.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to go back for a second and just go back to talking about Vantage Point. So you talked about the inspiration behind what got you started with Vantage Point. It's the step up from Fireside. and you bring guests on to share their stories. Sometimes they're an expert on a topic, and sometimes it's a personal journey. You talked a little bit about memorable guests that you've had on that have stood out for you. You also have this YouTube channel that's very professionally put together, by the way. Oh my gosh. But what I really liked on it was your little video way at the beginning when you know which one, right? Your little vantage point video.
I dread the thing.
Oh, okay. Oh, there's another one.
The trailer.
Yeah, the little trailer about
the trailer for it.
Yeah, like, like what is this place, right? Like, why would I want to come and join you for these stories? And so I really appreciated the way you talked about Vantage Point and what your hope was at the time. Can you just take us through that? Because I would imagine since that time, your mission maybe has shifted, or you're even more clear about the journey of Vantage Point. So when you put the little trailer together, you talked about your hope, connecting people. You also talked a lot because you love traveling. You also talked about the connection with nature as well.
Yeah, I think most of what I said, I think I totally still agree with. So the trailer that I made, really short little cinematic.
Yeah.
And it starts under the water, and
yes,
you sort of progress up a mountain, right? That's yes. The kind of theme behind it. There's a kind of echo delay on the sound at the start, so it sounds like you're under the water. It's like a sonar, like you're in a submarine. It's all super like artistic.
Yeah.
maybe a bit over the top, but it's sort of a metaphor to describe how there's all these different ways you could climb that mountain, but there's a vantage point at the top that if you could be at that top point and understand everything, you'd be in such a great position, in that optimum vantage point. If you could understand everyone's story, all the different ways you could get there, and all the lessons that have been learned on those different people on their different ways up this mountain, And it's just a sort of metaphor for, life's journey or something.
Yeah, it was good because I want to take it back to, you talked about, if you're biking along the path, think of all the people that also did their biking and their struggle to get through this uphill battle, right? This getting to the peak, as you said. And your way is one way. And it's your way, and you can't take your way away because that's what you know. But do we have it in us to recognize that your way is one of many ways to get there? I really thought that was really well said, the way that you put that out there. Do you feel that that message is continuing through your interviews with your guests?
Yeah, I hope it will. We mentioned earlier, I've taken a little bit of time off. I took 2 months off. I did a little bit of traveling. When I came back, just still wasn't really feeling it, but going to give it another go this year. I think doing this podcast with you gave me a bit of inspiration to sort of get back into it again, because it's exciting. It's exciting getting ready to do this with you, and it made me think, oh, you know what, I missed that. So I've sent a couple of invites out, and then I've got a couple of people to agree to come on and do some stuff with me.
Nice.
And I hope I continue putting out like a good positive message. The other thing you've got to bear in mind as well is, I didn't really sort of capture this in that trailer. It's only a 2-minute thing, but there's different mountains, right?
Yeah.
People are going to different places. Where your finish line is might not be where someone else's finish line is. So, it's almost naive to think that you can kind of know everything, but you can try.
Yeah, totally. And those of us that have tried or have been around those trying to know everything, it doesn't last very long. Not very many people want to be around us when we are the smartest person in the room. Right. So I think it is a good reminder that it's not, again, about being the smartest person or knowing everything, or it's knowing what is your story. I think that's the key, getting through life, knowing your own story. Have self-compassion. Like that's a big thing that I've learned from every single guest that's come on. The underlying theme has been about self-compassion. For you, are there similar themes? Like for me, self-compassion and gratitude. What sort of themes have sort of stood out for you with guests that have come on?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting what you're saying there. Just to bring it back to what I do in personal training, that's one thing I always tell my clients is, how are you going to be there to do all these other things you've got going on in your schedule if you don't make that time for yourself? Because, people come to me, they're like, I can only do this session or maybe one session every other week. I've just not got the time to fit this in. And it ends up being that they do have time. They just prioritize other things. And a lot of people, they're genuinely trying to sort of be there for everyone else apart from themselves. And it's like, you can do that to an extent, but that energy is going to run out. You need to replenish that energy. And guess what? I take an hour out of my day to go to the gym, and every other hour of that day, I'm more productive, I'm more positive, I'm better help to the people around me, I'm better at doing my job.
Totally, yeah.
It does have a kind of ripple effect.
I would agree. Like, there's more clarity. I feel sometimes even more organized when I start my day with that, or have that routine. It helps set up for the next day too. So I think that's a good reminder, because I also had a guest on who sort of said, like, invest in yourself. It's worth it. And I appreciate that message going along with what you're saying, which is we care for all the other things. And sometimes it's a distraction. It's sometimes about pleasing other people, but sometimes it is a distraction and a way to deflect and maybe not be as responsible for ourselves. You talked a little bit about your clients and helping them look at their schedule and prioritize. How do you help them recognize that and get to that place of, okay, I'm going to consistently take care of my physical health or my mental health?
Like we've been saying to people, so say there's a lot of single parents, how are they going to be there for their kids? They can't be taking hours out of their day to train, because that's selfish, Yeah. But you've got to look at it as not selfish, but as just responsibility, self-respect. How are you going to be there for your kid in 20 years time, 30 years time, if you're not well enough to run around with them because you didn't look after your health when it mattered? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're 30, 35, you've got a kid. If you put off training and looking after yourself, looking after what you eat, getting enough sleep, how are you going to be 100% to look after your kid? How are you going to be there in 20, 30 years? You're not going to be giving it your best, right? And if that's what you're trying to do because you're being selfless, is give them your best, whether it's your kid, your family, your work, anything. How are you really going to apply yourself or give it what you believe is your best effort? Or are you going to look back on that as, I wish I just looked after these things, if I just thought about these things in that time, seen clarity amongst the chaos and structured my life a bit better.
Right.
How much better off could I be, and how much better could I be for the people that I care about?
You speak very wisely, and I think in your time here, I feel you have a lot of wisdom, and you see things from a young person's perspective. However, many young people don't necessarily see from this way. And I'm just curious, like, what role models or who are the people that you surrounded yourself or surrounded around you as a child growing up that you'd want to give a shout out to helping you get to where you're at here?
When I was growing up, my parents always told me, like, you can do anything if you just try hard enough. Yeah. If you put your mind to it, maybe it's not totally true, because there's obviously things you can't do. Yeah. I think when I was a kid, I really wanted to be an artist. And then now I realize how hard it is to actually break out as an artist. Yeah. I've got a fairly decent skill for drawing and sketching, but there's so much competition as an artist. You've got to be smart about how you're marketing yourself. You've got to do something that stands out so much from other people, or get in a very lucky, fortunate position, or a combination of both, probably, to get to that point. So yeah, I mean, there's a bit more to it than that, but just having that mentality of just do the best you can, that was always sort of there in the back of my mind, I think, growing up. And, I'll give a shout out to Pokémon.
Oh, Pokémon.
So,
yeah.
I'll tell you why. So I watched all the Pokémon. Anyone I went to school with will back this up. I was obsessed in school with Pokémon. And I think, again, that the thing that I liked about it was it's so optimistic. It's so upbeat. It's all about being the best that you can be, working together, and become a champion. Yeah. And I think that just sort of stuck in my brain. And I've just applied that mentality to everything I do. So treat bad parts of your life as training, as training towards a bigger goal. You're always going to come out of stuff better. I don't know, in my experience anyway. Yeah. Even though it sucks at the time.
Yeah, totally, right? Just like a workout. During a workout, it's like, I hate this so much. And then when you're done it's like, oh, that was nice. That was great. So Pokémon, and you had your parents sort of guiding you. Yeah. I love that was your village. That's amazing. So then where did the love for fitness and personal training, where did all that come from for you?
So when I was in my last couple of years of school, I was in sports teams. Like, I still did training, but I wasn't particularly sort of committed to it. I liked the actual sports days, but I didn't train in my own time or anything. I was like, I'll just show up on the day. And I was lucky to be reasonably good at that certain stuff, the stuff I was in anyway. But I never really applied myself outside of anything. In school, I always felt like a bit of a black sheep. I often thought, what's the point of doing this, and this, it feels like I'm just writing essays for the sake of it.
Right.
And I found it quite hard to apply myself in my last few years of school, and I felt very sort of directionless. It felt like everyone in my class had an idea of, okay, I'm going to go to uni, I'm going to do this, become a doctor, whatever. I'm there getting, similar exam results to some of my friends who have these aspirations of going off and doing this career, doing this thing. I was like, I just don't have that. I don't have the motivation to do that. And as soon as I was old enough to get a gym membership, I just saw that, and I was like, that is something I could just tell will be good for me. Mm-hmm. I didn't know why. I could just tell that it was a way to better myself in some way and apply myself. And I did, and I was consistent pretty much from the day I started. Yeah, just haven't looked back. And then through years of training, I feel like I kind of figured out what my priorities are, and I had to be consistent at something first before I could sort of go back and figure that out.
Well, and then you just took it to like personal trainer. You do HIIT, spin. Okay, you have to like let me in on the spin secret. Do the spin instructors actually use the gauge in the way that there's like we are? So if we're uphill, are you actually going uphill as you're teaching, or are you pretending? Because sometimes I'm like, how are you talking and doing this when I can't even breathe right now?
Right, yeah. So sometimes it's got to be a bit of artistic license there. Right? So the chances are your spin instructor isn't going quite as hard as you are, but most of the time they will be. Yeah. And they're just so used to breathing in time with spinning that they can shout and do a whole spin class and be totally fine. Like I remember my first few spin classes, the first spin class I went to where I wasn't the instructor, I could barely walk after it. I couldn't breathe. I was used to training pretty hard, so I thought, oh, this should be quite easy.
Totally,
for me.
Yeah.
I came out, I could barely do anything. I was like, wow, that was a lot harder than I thought.
Yeah.
But then after doing it for a few weeks in a row in my job, a couple of times a week, I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to keep this up, because first couple of weeks my legs were just done in every time. And then suddenly my body just starts adapting to it. And it's pretty much easy for me now to do a spin class while shouting the whole time.
Yeah.
And then people must think it's like you have to be some sort of psycho, but it's surprising what your body will condition itself to do if you just put it through it enough times. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I put my body through spin a lot, and I still would never be able to sit up there and teach it, because there's like it's a different level of strength when you are, like any leader, when you're leading the class, like you said, you're walking in, people are looking at you, relying on you. You kind of have to take the lead here and guide everyone. That's a lot of pressure. That's how I would imagine. So how long have you been doing that?
Yeah, just over 2 years now, over 2 years. So I've been qualified for a while. I never thought I'd really do anything with it, but then a job opened up, and I'd just come back from being abroad for a while, and I really needed work because I'd spent all my money basically, and I just fell into this job, and sort of never looked back. It's pretty good. I think once you're in the spin studio or the HIIT class, like when you're in that atmosphere, all the sort of anxiety or thoughts of, oh, people are looking at me type thing, that just goes away almost immediately. Once I walk in that room, the music's pumping, all the people are there sort of expecting me to put them through a workout and give them the motivation to put themselves through a workout, I guess, in a way. I just get in the zone, and it comes like second nature now, People say I'm like two people. I'm like this evil guy in the gym, and then I'm super nice and like laid back outside the gym.
I would believe it. Yeah, because all the instructors that I've ever had the joy of being around, they're great people, absolutely, outside of it. And then you get in the class and you're like, I fucking hate you so much right now. I don't know why I am here every day watching you torture me. I don't understand. But, you do it. You get something out of it. So I just think there's, we talked about different ways to be physical. And these are some of the ways that work for you, for me. And I think for all of us, the message is about movement. When we have movement and we're not always feeling like we have to sit still, when we have that movement, whether it's push, pull or whatnot in our life, and I hear a lot of that coming from what you're saying with your examples about how training ourselves physically can impact us mentally and vice versa. And they go hand in hand. So
there's a part in our DNA that's designed to move, right? The men are supposed to go out and hunt for food traditionally, right? Yeah. Everyone's supposed to sort of, I guess it's just so inherent to us that we have to move to feel good. And this society, this like generation that we're in right now, it's like sitting down is almost, it's almost required. You know, you're sitting down in school all day. You're sitting down in an office job all day. Unfortunately, in my job, that I don't have to sit down all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like we're very sedentary these days. And I think that rise in depression and anxieties and all this stuff, it totally correlates to that. You know, it's no surprise to me at all.
Yeah.
You know?
So you and I have been talking about, we talk interviews sort of similar. So podcasting allows for intimate storytelling. How do you connect with your audience through your podcast on a personal level?
I guess you know, I find out where they're coming from. You know, so first things first, I find out like, you know, what their story is. You know, as you've done with me today, I guess. Find out where they're coming from so I can understand what they're saying. You know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, make sure I ask them about the stuff that they're passionate about. If it's something they don't care about, then they're not going to give me they're not going to give me a good answer at all. Whereas if it's something they're passionate about, then most people will just talk for days. I mean, I could talk for days about fitness, about podcasting, all this stuff. You know, these are things I enjoy doing. Yeah, as far as technique, I don't know. I just wing it totally on the spot. I have like a few bullet points that I look at while I'm podcasting. Yeah, I think people can tell if you're not interested. You've got to care about who you've got on. So I would never invite someone on my podcast who I expect I wouldn't care about, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, I'd specifically invite people that I find interesting. So then hopefully it comes across that I'm interested, and therefore people listening will also hopefully be interested in what's going on. You know?
Right. So, okay. So like you love, let's go to traveling for a sec. You love traveling. And you took a hiatus, you did some traveling, you recently were in the Philippines, you said. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about how traveling has impacted your love for this podcasting and your physical background as well? Where does traveling play in for you?
I guess I look at it in the same way as I look at podcasting and at training in the gym. It's broadening your horizons, you know. If you can afford to go and travel, or, you know, you get the opportunity to do it, 100% do it, you know.
Yeah.
When I went to the Philippines, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to live with a tribe in the Philippines. And that was pretty unreal, because it's just the opposite of how we live our lives here, you know. You know, they've got nothing. But the funny thing is they're so satisfied and sort of full and welcoming, it more so than we over here, who think we've got all our stuff figured out, lack of a better phrase. You know, it's surprising how you can have so little but be so sort of grateful and appreciative of the things they do have. And that was pretty eye-opening. But yeah, just make an effort to travel. I've been to quite a few different places at different times, just because every time I've been offered to, I've been like, yes, let me go there. Just because, I think experiencing different cultures is a big thing. Some people live in their little bubble their whole life. I know people in the town near where I live, they lived in one town and then they moved to the next town. That's their whole life. That's all the traveling they've done. Yeah. And guess what? They're miserable. They don't have any understanding of what, you know, how the world works. You know, and I think you owe it to yourself to understand that stuff, you know? Yeah, totally. I agree. What stands out to you of all the places you've been? Where would you say you've learned so much about yourself, or you think that's my happy place, I'd go back there again? To be honest, I went solo traveling recently for the first time ever, just to Lanzarote. And it was the first solo trip. I've always been with a girlfriend or friend, like group of friends or parents, whatever, back in the day. And it was my first time totally going on my own. And I guess that was a bit of a facing your fears type thing. Not that I was particularly scared. I was glad for the break, but you know, planning it all myself, making sure I got all the connecting flights. You know, easy stuff, but if you don't think it through, you're going to mess it up. Yeah. And it was just a fun experience, like totally being on my own. Make sure I had a good gym out there. Yeah. Did a bit of hiking, did a lot of exploring, met some local people, learned like quite a bit of language while I was out there, which is fun. Yeah, I think that was a good little eye-opener for me, spending time in pretty much total isolation apart from the people I met there. You know, just how optimally I could live my life without the distractions that I have here. Yeah. That was a fun one. Do you feel that the more you travel, like you go away and the more, like every time you return home, you have a different appreciation for your home, or you see something different about where you're from that you didn't necessarily notice before your travels? Yeah, I guess more is I definitely feel different each time I come back from traveling. It's like I found like another part of another layer of uncovered another layer of who I
Yeah.
am. And I think I don't know why exactly that is. I think it's just the sort of thing of putting yourself through different experiences, stuff that maybe frightens you or is totally outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Making yourself do that stuff, and you just unwrap another layer of who you are, maybe.
We have. That's why I was asking you, do you see things different when you come back? Because every time I come back from a trip, I'm like, okay, like I'm very blessed to be where I am.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm very grateful that I'm safe. I'm very grateful that I can travel. And I don't know if you've ever been to Canada. Have you ever come out our way?
Oh yeah, maybe next year. Maybe next year.
I know you like the warmth, but hear us out. Maybe you'll like the cold as well. It's a different cold than your cold. So there's a lot of beautiful places out here and you're an outdoorsy person. You'll probably love the hikes and the lakes and all of that. So come on over. Yeah, there's a lot to see. But I think anywhere we get to go, like it used to be, my perspective has changed a lot in the last little bit in terms of it. I wanted to do the fancy traveling. And I don't know, in the last few years, I'm just very, very grateful that we get to go. And honestly, if we get in a car as the four of us, as the family, and just drive somewhere and stay in a hotel, like that to me is great because it's an adventure. I'm learning that. I used to hate road trips. I used to be like, let's just get there. And now I'm like, oh, okay, I can handle being in a car with all of us for that many hours, because you learn a lot about each other when you're in that space together, and you can't escape from each other. So it's a bit of a different thing. So I don't know if the road trips are your thing. Yeah. Do you ever do road trips?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. There's certainly traveling with people is fun.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're learning to enjoy the journey. And I wonder if that's something you could apply to other areas of your life.
Yes.
In a really profound, obnoxious way.
That's such a good way. I took like 30 minutes to say this, but you're exactly right. That's exactly what it is just, learning. It's not about the end game. It's like getting there, the process.
Living in the moment, isn't it?
Oh, man. Like, for example, when you talked about being in the Philippines and having the experience of living with the tribe, what were some things that you learned that because you talked about them being so grateful, having very little, but feeling like you're so fulfilled. What did you see and how they communicated and how they showed their appreciation for everyday things that we would take for granted?
Well, nothing's easy to get there. So I guess back to your point earlier, one thing I do appreciate here is how convenient, tap water, Wi-Fi, things like that we take for granted. These are reasons I wouldn't want to live in other countries.
Yeah.
I like living where I am here, but traveling to other places.
Yeah.
Nothing's sort of taken for granted there. If you want a meal, you've got to go out and hunt and catch and cook your food, right? Or pick it out of a massive tall tree that you've got to climb all the way up to get it.
Right.
They appreciate those things, or they hold those simple things with such high respect, and they treat their elders with respect. They value things like family and coming together every Sunday in their churches and stuff. Like, they value these things, like the kind of community stuff that probably not so long ago in this country and in your country, we had a lot more value and respect for, that we kind of don't anymore, because we think, oh, that's just old. Let's all get on the internet and tweet things.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, there's just more to life than that. And I think we're missing out on a lot of it now that we used to have kind of weighed off back in the day.
Yeah.
And they still have that kind of way of life weighed off. But the sad thing is, they all want to come over to the Western world and live our life. I'm thinking, gosh, you've got it, like, obviously life's tough out there, but there's so much they have that people over here need.
Yes. Oh, that's so well said.
Responsibility, self-respect, sunshine.
Yeah.
Nature.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's well said. It is very true that they have that we need. And I know it's like the grass is greener, right, on the other side. I had a friend that passed away, and my favorite thing I ever heard through him was the grass is greener where you water it. And I'd never heard that before, and I've never heard it again. I've only heard him say it. And I so agree with that. Is like, it'll always be better somewhere else, but it can be just as good where we water it and where we take care of it. And I don't know, I'm grateful for that. And that's what I hear your time with that family in the Philippines and the village that you got to stay with. Were folks speaking English, or did you have to communicate in a different way?
They could speak enough English to sort of tell me, go over there, eat this. Some of them could speak decent English just because they had a connection to my friend who lives here, who I went with. Yeah, there wasn't a massive language barrier, as in I could sort of speak through my friend a little bit. Yeah, generally it was like they would just kind of push me wherever they wanted me to go. So, you know,
and you're just like this white kid that's like, okay, I'll just go over here.
I was the only, I was like the first white kid that had ever been there.
Oh,
so, you know,
what's that?
They'd taken photos with me. They thought I was like some sort of American celebrity or something.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like they feel honored that you would want to come and spend time.
Yeah,
like,
something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, wait a minute. I'm the one that should be honored. You're allowing me to be here and learn, you know, where you're from. But yeah, there's this like, definitely this appreciation for, oh, the foreign man coming. And I only know this because this happened when we brought my husband years and years and years ago when we were dating to India. And you go to the villages and everyone's like, yeah, great. The family from Canada's here, but let's talk to this white guy here and invite him in and make him tea and take care of him. And you're like, oh, that's lovely that, you know, that's how we treat people from different countries, you know, because people of color don't necessarily experience that in North America and maybe also right in Europe as well. Not the same kind of respect when you are a white person going to the Philippines or India or some of these other countries. It's always interesting when you see that. You're like, I'm in the motherland and I don't even get, hey, how are you, lady? It's move over. Let's talk to this guy over here. It's fascinating, right? So
I think it's just a culture difference, isn't it? You know, Western world, it's like people are just more rude.
Yeah.
You know, I bet if you reverse the roles and we were all living over there, they were all living over here, that they had sort of progressed with technology and society in the same ways as we have. I imagine they would be just as obnoxious and rude as people tend to be over here.
Yeah.
You know, it's more of a sort of societal thing, this kind of unwelcoming kind of atmosphere you get more so here. But I don't know. I like to think more people than not are welcoming like that. You know, like most people I know are as welcoming as that. Yeah. And it tends to be just a few outliers that make us all look bad.
Yes. And we can usually spot them from a mile away. So we tend to stay away from those folks. However, I also think when you're traveling and you're going to someone else's motherland, there is this respect that, you know, we should be bringing along. Like, I'm visiting your home. If I go to your country, it's the same as me going to your house. And so hopefully I bring my bedside manners with me. And same thing I would do as our parents teach us at other people's houses. Hopefully the respect is that when we're visiting other countries. And I think, like you said, when we have the privilege to go and travel and go and visit other people's homes, we learn that etiquette in a way of having more appreciation as well, because there's nothing like being in a country where people are not speaking your language. And you have to figure out the subway system or figure out how to get by or how do I eat food, right? And so I think, again, it goes back to that whole vantage point theory that you have around we're going, you know, through these obstacles in life. And if we can be present and learn from them, it's going to maybe make the next obstacle a little better to manage or get through or get to the next level, I guess, is another way of looking at you know, your whole podcast. Is there anything that you do want to go back to and clarify, or you want to spend a little more time on?
I find it interesting when we're talking about podcasting. Perhaps we could have talked a little bit more creative process and like burnout, things like that, because that's something I'd experienced recently with Vantage Point. And I was going to ask if you'd ever experienced that, because you've been so consistent, and like what you would say to people who are experiencing stuff like that. Because, you know, it's hard to stick with something so consistently. You know, I got 33 episodes in, which I thought was doing pretty good. Yeah. But
I like that question. I will answer that because I've never actually talked about that in any of the episodes. And it's funny you asked, because recently I did feel something, and the burnout in particular that I have felt has actually been keeping up with social media, the preparing, inviting the guests, recording, the editing, all that stuff. Hasn't been any. It's been very fulfilling every week to put some of this out. I left a job almost a year and a half ago that I was at for 18 years. And I thought that was my life. Oh. Yeah. Like that was like, I thought that's who I was. And so I left it and I had some space, and, you know, this opportunity for this podcast came up. So I'm holding that really close. Like it's a passion project. And so that I'm really proud of and enjoying. But I've been struggling the month of December in particular, like this social media thing of, first of all, like I'm that generation that, you know, you either go along with technology or you get left behind. And I was the one that, you know, gets left behind because I didn't really get into technology. So when being on socials for MFU, I know I need to do it and I probably could do a lot more, but I've been struggling with it because it's just really anxiety provoking of being on social media constantly and seeing all the things you see, and then you get trapped and get part of this, but also like not fully confident putting my face out there yet. So you even gave me some good advice with video, and there's just been so much anxiety around that lately. Like, I don't know if you connect or can relate to that.
No, I get it, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems such a shame. You got such a nice, like, friendly face, and it's like you could be hideous and horrible, but people would never know.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
But you know, I'd be using it for what I could.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, it's definitely. I think, you know, you're just giving yourself more opportunity for people to find you by sharing, you know, your reels and sort of showing more of who you are. But I get like 100% why you wouldn't want to do that. Like, even the clips I share, they're very little of me, they're more about the guests.
Yeah.
So it might just include me sort of briefly responding or setting up a question.
Yeah.
But I don't put a lot of stuff out where it's just me talking. I used to, sort of back when I tried to make sort of vlog type YouTube videos, which I don't do so much now. I mean, I made a vlog of my trip to Lanzarote recently, but I was barely in it. I think I was in it for like 2 frames. You know, I just don't like putting myself out there as much. But when it comes to just backing the information I'm putting out there, for example, I've started making personal training style videos. Just put one out today. Going to start making more like in-depth technique breakdowns, stuff like that, where it's like I can back the information I'm putting out and it's not so personal to me, but people might still relate to maybe who I am, or sort of, you know, if I add a bit of personality to it, but it's not my whole personality.
Yeah, I do. I understand. There's a good balance.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
Right.
It does. And I think it's a good nudge too to be, okay, get out there, do that more. Because I think it's about the stories and it's about the people having a voice, essentially. So
yeah, there's pros and cons because, you know, like you say, negative might be, you know, some people might not have the nicest things to say.
Yeah.
But, you know, at least you're reaching those people, and you're probably reaching 100 people who have lots of nice things to say. Yeah. They're just not as vocal about it. And it's like, you know, if you're reaching more people, you know, you see this with the likes of like the massive people like Logan Paul and Jake Paul, for example, even Joe Rogan, you know, biggest podcaster.
Yeah.
You know, the amount of negativity around him, but also the amount of people who listen to him and
connection piece. And for anyone out there that's listening that doesn't have that, how cool is it? How like giving is it? How validating is it? How all the wonderful feelings is it that you brought a guest on that one person connected with? Like that, to me, that's where I'm at. You know, I'm just like, yay, someone listened to you talk and took something from that, and that was helpful. Like that's
it was because you made that happen.
Well, I guess I don't even ever look at it that, you know, like, yeah, I get you, fair, but yeah, I guess, yeah, I know.
Otherwise they would have never connected to that person or heard what they had to say if you didn't build your own platform and then give them a chance to speak on it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, what would you say to people who do struggle to keep consistent like that? You know, you're so consistent. As someone who started around the same time as you, you know, you've been more consistent than me. I took 3 months off. I'm only just getting back into it because of you. You know, how do you stay so consistent when you're not feeling it one week? How do you convince yourself to keep pushing through? Or is it just because you've got so many pre-recorded that you give yourself little breaks in between? What do you do?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think what keeps the consistency is the feedback and the welcoming in this community we're building. You know, like we're building this little village, and it started with 1-2 family members that are supporting you. You know, I'm sure you had your circle, your friends, people saying, do this. This is a great idea. And then you're building this community. And that brings me back every week because people keep wanting to give their time to us. And that's like, you know, time is apart from your health, right? Time. Exactly. And so if you're going to allocate an hour, 2 hours a day or a week to someone's podcast or whatnot, like that's amazing. So that's, to be honest, I'm like, that's what brings me back, is because people want to keep coming back. And every episode we have a couple more. And so I think that's lovely, right? Like, and I think the other thing is, like, you talked about burnout, and I think something that's really helped, apart from the social media piece, the prevention is celebrating small successes. So the 25th episode was a big deal. The 50th, the 1 year, like every episode, every guest is an important milestone to have. Like we don't even know each other. And we got to connect over having these platforms. And then in this past year, really kind of, in the last couple of months, even like kind of following each other more to the point where it's like, hey, come on, let's talk. How is that not a win? You know what I mean? So all those little successes, I think also for me, definitely make me want to keep coming back. Like, how is it that you decided, you talked about you took a break, but okay, you took a break, you want to get back into it. So clearly you're missing something, right? Like what is it for you that's bringing you back and wanting to get started again?
Yeah. So I didn't really take a break in that I was still doing stuff. Yeah. The reason I took a break from podcasting is because I went traveling and then I started a personal training business. So the time I would have been podcasting, I decided to prioritize those other things.
Yeah.
And also, because I'd been podcasting so regular, I felt like I was missing out on some other parts of my life. Like so sometimes I'd need to get an episode out. So I'd spend the day editing it. I'd be like cancelling plans with my friends so I could make sure I get the episode out.
Yeah.
Because I was keeping it consistent every week for 33 weeks, I think it was.
That's all, yeah.
So, it was a commitment and I was committed to growing it because, you take a week off, you see the numbers start dropping.
Yeah.
And, I had to get sort of okay with that over the last 3 months. Yeah. And I have to somehow think of something to drag people back in,
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully they've had enough time to catch up on my old episodes.
There you go.
If they're listening, but,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, but yeah, burnout though, I think, everyone gets it. And sometimes you've got to just switch it up and do something different and then come back to it. And then you might be better than ever, instead of trying to keep forcing it when, I was definitely feeling burnt out by it, I was getting more of a stress to sort of make sure I had a guest and an episode ready. And then the last episode I put out, my guest was very patient, but we had a few like connection issues and stuff. And it was just, it was so stressful.
Yes.
That afterwards I was like, God, I'm glad I'm going away for a bit. I'm not even going to try and keep episodes coming.
I know that. The one time that I had the worst technology issues, they're also podcasters. And so I was like, why is it that with you two on, who I'm already nervous to have like other podcasters, we get in our head. They were so good. They were like, listen, out of everyone, we're the best ones because we get it. They're like, one time we recorded the best episode and it didn't even record. So I'm like, okay, I hear you, right? Have you ever had that happen where you're like, this is going to be great?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. I constantly keep looking. Yeah. I'm always looking. When you feel like, why are you looking down? That's because I'm like, is it still on? Is it still going?
Well, you saw me move everything earlier because my phone started beeping at me because it was only on 10% battery left. I was like, I've got to make sure I plug this in before it just cuts out and ruins the podcast.
Now we don't have an episode to air because of you. Thank you for thinking of that. Okay, well,
I got you.
Let's do this. Let's bring it in. Okay, so you talked a little bit about the future holds. We're getting back. You got guests lined up. Is there anything else that we can expect from you coming out soon, whether it's training, whether it's with your podcast?
Yeah, podcast, training videos. I've just started putting training videos out because with my PT business, it's quite small scale at the moment. It's going well, really well actually for only being going for a few months really. But I want to start increasing that reach and sort of get more online side of things so I can sort of set myself up a little bit, get myself out there, go traveling a little bit more and work away from home more. So that's the one thing I like about podcasting is, like you were saying earlier, we can do it from anywhere. Yeah. And I'd like my personal training side of things to also work a bit like that. Say I want to go to Lanzarote, might decide to do some personal training in the gym there. And I've already got clients waiting for me because they found me online.
Yeah, that's
really sort of
cool.
where I want to get to. And it's like, I feel like there's a lot of people putting out fitness content, but there's not a lot of new information out there. So, I've been in the gym for like 10 years. I've got a lot of sort of technique stuff that people might not have thought of, or even just mindset stuff that maybe my perspective is a little bit different to theirs.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to start sharing that sort of thing.
That's really cool.
I've been putting it off long enough.
Maybe that's like your thing where the mental and the physical health aspect come along on a vacation journey or something where you get to interview people, like to go back to the Philippines and have an interview with some of the members of the tribe that you got to stay with. Can you imagine what that would be like just to have that sort of conversation?
I did make like a video of that trip. I made a video called I Spent a Month in Living with the Tribe, whatever. yeah, it was great, but there was so much that I couldn't get because we were either hiking in conditions where you just couldn't record stuff because you were holding a machete
Oh my
because
gosh.
snakes might jump out at you
Oh
and you got
my
to cut their heads
God.
off of them.
Did you see snakes ever? Did you see snakes?
Not many actually. The people we were hiking with saw them. I didn't see many.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot of big horrible spiders out there.
Oh.
Monkeys swinging about in the trees, that sort of stuff. So that was fun. But yeah, a lot of stuff we were doing, it's like you couldn't really take a phone. It's like, we were swimming in lakes and stuff.
Yes.
And it was like, you couldn't record it, but the moment was amazing. And I didn't want to be recording stuff. I just wanted to be sort of in the moment.
Yeah.
So my video was only like 10 minutes, but I felt like it summarized what I did out there. But yeah, definitely when I go traveling in the future, I want to keep making little travel, I guess like travel documentary style vlog type things, try and capture the vibe of what it felt like to me when I was there. Know, rather than trying to capture everything and be that obnoxious guy holding the camera all the time.
Yeah. Well, because you're right, because you lose the present time when we're behind the cameras, and some things are just meant for you, like some things aren't meant to share with everyone as well. And so there's these moments where you have when you're out there and you want everyone to see. And I think that's part of the world we live in, where we do have access to people 24/7, right? Your YouTube channel could be all day long if you wanted it to be. But I think,
our brains can't handle that.
But that's just it.
It's why these streamers all go mental, because I don't know if you've seen this whole rise of streamers and stuff nowadays, and they're all total nutcases because, they get to a certain point, they get all this fame, people watching them all the time, they're filming 24 hours. And their brains just can't take it. Humans aren't meant for that much human interaction. You're meant to have like a small, close group. That's how humans have always been. And people can't handle it. That's why people get so, intimidated by Twitter people, people who they don't even know. They take it to heart what people say to them online. But really, it doesn't matter. It's someone you're never going to meet. Someone you never would have chosen to hang around with in real life anyway. And I think I used to fall into trap a little bit of sort of sharing too much of my life a bit. Like I would try and make YouTube videos of like, all right, here's me going out with my friends and stuff, and I'd like film it, and it was fun, but I definitely wanted to take a step back from that because I don't want to share my life. I want to put out stuff I've created, not stuff that is me.
I do know, because it goes back to your point of get your face out there more, and that's exactly it. It's like this is someone else's moment, someone else's story. That's what matters at the end of the day. And I think when we can ground ourselves with what you're saying, and I agree with you, I think it helps managing some of that social media burnout and that tech burnout that we don't often think about, scrolling apps, all that stuff that we're on all day. Definitely, I notice a big difference if it's the last thing I see and the first thing I see in the morning. I'm foggy, I'm struggling all day, and it's not really what people are saying that's impacting me. It's just too much. My brain's like, whoa, like, can we just turn the lights on slowly before we've looked at 17 comments or 30 videos in, like a short span of time? It goes for a lot of people.
I think we were both of the generation where it's like, I mean, I didn't get a phone until I was 15 or something.
Exactly.
And it was like, you can use this to call your mum in case you need a lift home.
Yep. That's exactly it. Yep.
And it was, I was just around when like flip phones and stuff were coming out. I think the first like iPhones were coming out when I was sort of 15, 16.
Yeah.
I don't know, I might have the dates wrong on that, but it definitely felt like I grew up without it being a part of me, whereas now you see kids, like young kids, and they've got these tablets and phones. They're just constantly looking at them. They're not entertained by toys. They're only entertained by if they're holding a screen. And it's, I don't know, it's kind of scary, Don't you think?
Yeah, it is. It's a lot.
It can't be good for you. It can't be good for you.
It's not. At this time, I'll ask you if there's anything that you wish I had asked you today that I didn't, or that you want to go back and maybe touch on.
I think you covered everything. I think you did a good job.
Okay, so then let's do a call to action. So what is something that you can leave our listeners with? Maybe something that they can go and think about, or something they can do based on what we've been talking about today.
Go and do something you've been putting off. Don't make an excuse for it. You can, people complain about stuff, right? Because you're rewarded for complaining in this day and age, right? That's just how it seems to be. But the thing is, that's the most negative thing ever, right? You're so much better off if you ditch the complaining and just go out there and get something, right? Get something for yourself, and you'll feel so good. You'll run out of things to complain about.
I feel like you were directly just talking to me about go and get your shit done. Like, I feel like you literally said that to me. So now I'm like all the listeners, I have to also make
I was talking to
sure.
myself more so.
That's usually what it is, right? I was like, oh man, you're right. I'm making an excuse with some of this stuff. I gotta go do it. So that was a good one.
Everyone is.
Yeah.
And they'll
Yeah.
complain, they'll get sympathy from their friends about it. It's like, oh well, I can't do it because of this, and you know,
Yeah.
I've got my hip and my back, and you know,
Yeah.
I've got this cold.
Yes.
There's never a perfect time. Just go and do it.
Yeah.
Just go and do it. Stop putting it off.
Yeah. Or if you are putting it off, then I think the other part of that is like, let's just be upfront about it, because we do become trapped by our reasons or excuses, whatever we want to say. And it's like, okay, I didn't show up. And maybe that's what I have to take responsibility for, versus I didn't show up because I was sick, because this didn't happen or whatnot. Because then that is when it starts feeling like it's an excuse or we're complaining. So that's a good
you'll
reminder.
feel worse if you live with regret.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. Okay, so where can people find you? You're getting back on track. I'm so excited for this. You also, like I said, have a great YouTube channel. There's some personal training videos you're going to be putting out. So if folks want to get in touch with you, they want to learn more about you, where do they find you?
I'm going to start podcasting again, starting next year, taking the 3 months off, hopefully starting January.
Good.
Going to start with the weekly uploads again. Thanks in part to you for sort of inspiring me to get that going again. You know, the podcasting itch kind of came back.
I'm glad.
So yeah, looking forward to that. And yeah, Bay PT is my personal training account. So yeah, if you're into fitness, follow me there.
Perfect. And we'll also post it too once we post your episode, where your
Awesome.
socials and where people can get in touch with you. I want to thank you for your time. You gave me a lot of it today. I appreciate the conversations we've started having the last little bit. I am also hoping that you and I get to continue this, because I'm learning a lot from you as well. And you asked me some good questions today, even though this was supposed to be the other way around. And you've got me thinking about certain things as well in terms of growth. And so I'm hoping we can continue connecting and talking about our journeys. And, you know, it's nice to have a little community that we can build in the background where we can lean in on each other. If we feel a burnout coming, you know, we can check in with each other. And so I would love that moving forward. Okay, well, thank you for being here. And for everyone else listening, we really appreciate your time as well. These conversations are door openers. So if there's anything that you want to contribute to this conversation, or you want to learn more about Glen, you know where you can find him. You can reach out to us. You know where you can find us. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for inviting me on. It's been fun.
It's been nice having you.